Hello and welcome the listeners of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. Today we are once again with you for yet another scintillating edition that is going to be on time series. This is being offered to the MBA students of Hospital and Healthcare Management, and that is for first year and first semester students. This is the part of the block 2, which is correlation and regression, and the unit is 7th unit. It's called time series. I want to ask you a couple of questions before we move on to discuss about time series. Can we predict COVID-19 wave in the future? Or when is the COVID-19 wave is going to hit us back? You may be wondering that for last 4 or 5 years we have been troubling with COVID cases rising, or we had the cases of COVID in 2020 and 2021. Why do you think that the second wave is going to come or the third wave is going to come? Do you see a pattern? My next question to you is all about why do you think there are more number of cases as far as the heart attacks are concerned on Mondays? Why more heart attacks happen on Mondays? Is there a pattern? Both the questions are related to time series. Let us look at what is time series. Time series, if you pay attention to it, is nothing but understanding the data over a period of time. How data and the time are related. Number of patients, every day how many number of patients actually the hospital will have. And how many people are actually being discharged from the hospital. Are they not telling something about the time? And what about the flus? What about the epidemics? What about the pandemics? Are they seasonal or are they going to have some trends? All these answers lie in the time series. Let us look at a few of the other things that we have, like where do we use the time series data? We use the time series data for most of the times, especially as far as doctors are concerned, for monitoring purposes. Monitoring the health of the patients. What is the fastest recovery? What are they going to get the outcomes? And they also wanted to forecast. Will there be breakout of the flus? Will there be breakout of some seasonal diseases? And as well as they want to plan properly. Planning management is an important part of time series because the resources are limited. Do you have the equal number of nurses? Do you have patient to doctors ratio? All these things are part of the planning. So time series is an important statistical tool that is being used for variety of purposes. Like the stock market brokers also use the time series data to understand the patterns of the share market. Like why the share market is having a flop or slope, or why there is a rise and spike of the share market. All these things, I think time series is going to give you a lot of understanding. Let us look at different methods of time series. And what is the objective of the time series data? The time series analysis is precisely going to tell you how we are going to discover the pattern. Pattern is an important part of time series. And this pattern comes from the historical data. Data which has a previous history, or the time series is basically extrapolated to understand the future trends. It means that we are trying to understand or predict and forecast through the previous historical data. History tells a lot, and if it is recorded over a period of time, you will get that pattern. Recognizing that pattern is important part of the time series. Forecast is solely being prepared by the past values of the variable or the past forecast error. In both the cases, you will be able to forecast. So the past data gives you a better understanding of the future. So there is a relationship between the past and the future. Let us look at through this figure that you have a lot of forecasting methods. Couple of them are quite popular: quantitative and qualitative. So within quantitative, you have causality as we call it, and the other one is the time series. We have seen the causality through the regression models. Today we are going to look at the time series in more details. So look at the time series methods one after the other. There you are. A time series is a sequence of observation or measurements taken every day or every week or perhaps every month, every quarter, every 6 months, and also at every year or at the regular time interval. The key word here is the regular interval. Like for many of the stock market brokers and people who are into investment and also trading, they like to monitor minute by minute trends of the stock market, be it NSE or BSE for that matter. So time series is basically dependent on the pattern of the data. So what is this pattern? So pattern forms an important factor in understanding the whole time series and how the data has been behaved in the past, because the past data gives rise to the outcomes of the future. Like, if such behavior can also be expected to continue in the future, we can use the time series data, and that would also help us to solve the problems of the future. Isn't it so wonderful tool? Will it not going to solve the human problems to a great extent? Be it hospitals, the number of patients, trends, epidemics, pandemics, and also in the stock market as well. So time series has a lot of important things. Let us now look at the time series plot. What do you mean by this time series plot? This is a very useful and also the first step in selecting and appropriating the forecasting method, and is also to construct the time series plot. If you have the right approach, right method, then that is going to lead to the time series plot. What is this plot going to do? So a time series plot is typically going to give you a graphical representation or the presentation. So a time series plot is a graphical presentation of the relationship between time and the time series variable. The other one is that the time series is always on the horizontal axis. That means it's an independent variable. You know, all x's are nothing but independent variables. We have learned that in the past. And the time series values are shown on the vertical axis. So time and then the other values. Let us look at the pattern. We have been talking a lot about the patterns, because time series is dependent on the pattern, and this pattern is going to be playing an important role in determining the outcomes of a problem. So typical time series pattern will have different common types of data, like that can also be identified when examining time series plot. They are, like the first one is horizontal. You will get it through the graphical presentation. Then you have the trend, like we often have the trend of the fevers, flus, epidemics. Then what about the seasons? We say that in winter in Hyderabad, we have lots of dengue and chikungunya cases, or the spike in the malaria cases. That is the seasonality. You can also have a combination of both the trends and the seasons. That's why it's called trend and seasonal. And the last pattern, if you look at it, is cyclical. Every year, if there is a summer, children are going to have a lots of problem with their bowel movement or diarrhea or dysentery. So these are the things that you will generally come across. Would you like to recollect some of the patterns that you have observed from the past? They are reoccurring and they are coming to you often. Well, think about it as I'm going to take you to the next slide. And this time we are going to talk about the fundamentals of the time series. So what is time series? Which is nothing but a sequence of observations at regular intervals. And through that, you will be able to understand the patterns. For example, the number of COVID cases this week, and then number of people who have been admitted into the hospital, patients who are coming in the outpatient block, OPD as we call it, a number of patients who have been admitted. All these are examples of the time series. Do you get some more examples in your mind? Do let us know. While we move ahead and talk about why is it important for the hospital administrators and also for the doctors. For doctors, of course, you will try to identify the patient trends. Why the patient is suffering? Would you get more patients? Because is this disease a vector-borne disease or is it a contagious disease? All these things the doctors will try to find out. So time series will come very handy to the doctors to understand the trends of the patients. What about the other issues that the doctor will be able to use the time series? That is planning the resources. You must have remembered during COVID-19, the hospitals were not able to admit all the patients because we were running short of the beds. Can there be a tool which will tell us, which will forecast, which will give us the forecasting that the number of beds occupied and the number of beds which are going to be released for the new patients? So this will help us to plan about the infrastructure. With limited resources, you will be in a position to plan it. Like you can often see the number of trains on the railway track. So if you plan it accordingly, how many trains that you want to have it in a day, which is purely based on the time series forecasting. The other one is about the staff. You know that there is always this enormous pressure on the hospitals to have the paramedics. Like you have lots of nurses, doctors and others to support the patient care. And if you can plan it well before, then probably you will be able to take care of the HR or the staff problems. The other one is the drugs. The pharmaceutical industry will know that how many medicines are to be made available during a pandemic like COVID-19, or should the malaria and the preventive medicines be available. All these things are going to help the patients and also the doctors. Then you can also, one of the important tools of time series is also to help us understand and predict the outbreaks. Suddenly there is an outbreak of plague or vector-borne diseases or some fevers. So that is the reason time series is going to be very important for the doctors. Let us look at few of the components of the time series. Like we have shown you through the trends, through the seasonality, and we have also told you about the cyclic pattern. Every summer, every winter or every rainy season. During the rainy season in Hyderabad, we get a lot of common diseases. Same is the case with the random noise. We also have the other component called the random noise, and as far as possible we would try to reduce the noise to make the pattern works better. Let's go one after the other to understand each one of the components of the time series. The first one is the trend. What do you mean by trend? A trend can be long-term increases or decreases. If the blood pressure of the patient over a period of time, 5 years, 10 years, increases, then the doctor is in a position to diagnose it and also prescribe the right medicine. Or the doctors can also give you different kind of medicine if the fever of the patient is getting decreased. So upward trend and downward trend can be possible in this. For example, like the rising cases of diabetes. India has somehow become the capital of the diabetes, and there is a rising trend. Even as young as 20-year-old people are also getting affected with this sweet disease called diabetes. Then let us look at the seasonality. As the name suggests, seasonality. What is seasonality? Regularly yearly patterns that can happen every time that there is a change in the season. Summer season, winter season, rainy season, or the fall season. You will clearly going to see that. For example, like flu picks up during the winter. Winter has always been a testing time for the parents and the doctors because lots of patients are being reported during the flu and the rainy season, isn't it? Have you not observed it? I'm sure you observed it. Let us look at the cyclic patterns. The cyclic patterns are done largely when there is a multi-year cycle. When time and again, if you plot the data from 2010 to 2020, then you will come to know the cyclic patterns. For example, when and which year the dengue outbreaks happen the more? Was that in 2017 or was it in 2024? This gives you a lot of insights into the area of patient care and also public health, isn't it? Let us look at the random variations, or we call it as random error. This is about the unpredictability or the short-term changes. Suddenly you see something has spiked up and there are more number of patients who are admitted. Like food poisoning resulted into students being admitted. You often hear these reports in the popular media, isn't it? So, example like sudden spike of different kinds of diseases are unpredictable. Now look at this figure, you will get it. The real data is nothing but equals to trend plus seasonality plus noise. If you sum them together, then you get the real data. You may have the OPD visits, you will have it week after week, you will have it day after day, every day how many patients are coming to public hospitals. Every week how many patients are being admitted in the hospitals. All this is nothing but the real data. And data plays an important role in curing the diseases and also the management of the diseases. So let us look at the plot. So the plot values against the time. What is the blood pressure of the people during or over the past 7 days? So day 1 to day 7, there is a change in the pattern. You can clearly see there is a change in the pattern for each day. Look at the plot. Day 1 to day 7, are you not able to see a lot of changes in the blood pressure? You can see some spike that is being increased on day 7. That's how the doctors will be able to monitor the health of the patient. There is another interesting aspect about the method of time series. It's called the moving average. What do you mean by moving average? A moving average is nothing but smooth fluctuations. As smooth fluctuations would happen like 7 days average of the COVID cases. This is nothing but the moving average. We'll be able to get the average, and that is happening on the continuous basis. Let's look at through the working example to understand more clearly and comprehend the moving average. So moving average, if you look at the data sets of daily sugar levels, like you often have some diabetes patients and you can test their glucose levels before breakfast, after meals, you will get that data set. So if you keep on reporting, writing that data, then you can compute the moving average. For example, you can do it for 3 days, you can do it for 5 days, you can even do it for 7 days. That's how you can monitor at your own house or at your own level. Let's move on and look into exponential smoothing. What is exponential smoothing? Exponential smoothing is nothing but weights recent values the more. So the recent, like yesterday, it was more than day before yesterday. So ft plus 1 equals to a yt plus 1 minus a ft, and that is how you will be able to get this exponential smoothing. So from now onwards, we will try and look into different cases, and each case will give you a lot of insights into the time series. Let us look at the flu forecast. If you have a flu, the hospital can actually predict the flu visits. More and more hospitals are reporting the cases of the flu, and so as you will also be able to allocate the beds accordingly. There is always this shortage of the public health infrastructure, and you need better planning. So flu cases rise will actually going to put a lot of stress and strain on the public health. Therefore, it is mandatory to monitor the health of the people through time series. This is one example. And there is another important forecast called the naive forecast. A naive forecast is nothing but next value equals to last observed value. Basically, the last observed value will actually going to help you to forecast or predict, and that is why it's important to look into this data. And this is also called as the baseline model. Let's move on and try to understand moving average forecast. A moving average forecast is nothing but forecast equals to average of last k values. The k values would differ. It can also vary from time to time, and in this way you will be in a position to reduce the noise. A moving average forecast will actually help you to reduce the noise. Let us now look into the weighted moving average. A weighted moving average is nothing but more weightage is also given to the recent values. So what happened recently will be of more importance than what happened few years ago, because this is going to give you greater insight into the management of the diseases and providing the right kind of medical solutions to the patients. And this is quite prone to the responsive to the new data as well. So exponential smoothing forecast is nothing but declining weights for older data. The more and more older data, we are trying to reject it. Like if you have a data set of 100 years, but the recent trends will actually going to help you a lot. So this is also the ability to quickly adapt ourselves to the changing trends that take place in the public health system. Let us now look at through the example of ICU forecast. Can we predict the ICU patients? And the answer is yes. How do we do that? We will look at the patterns, we will look at the time series data. Like for last 5 days, what was the pattern? What was the data collected? And probably you can apply smoothing and you can also compare the results. This is how you will be able to forecast the ICU. How many patients were admitted in the ICU and how many patients are discharged from the ICU. Let us look at the decomposition of time series. A decomposition can happen if you split trend plus seasonality plus residual. That is y here is the dependent variable, right? So dependent variable equals to, or y equals to t trend s seasonality plus r residual. Look at this one, trend plus seasonality or seasonal spikes. You have the monthly OPD visits. So you have from 1 month to the other month. So here the data is presented to you for 5 months and the number of patients who have come. So on the x-axis and the y-axis, you can clearly see the months are there, and then you can clearly make out the difference. Can you tell me from the graph in which month there are more number of patients who visited the OPD? Well, it takes no real brain or brainer to make out, because it's quite simple and easy. You can clearly see it's the last month. Let us now pay attention to the other important area called the decomposition demo. In the decomposition demo, we generally look at the plot for each component separately. And to do that, basically we need to take the help and also detect the seasonal diseases. This is quite useful for almost all the seasonal diseases and its management, cure and prevention at many cases. So see how time series data is in a position to help you to get access to different sorts of diseases and their management. And it is important to interpret the decomposition. And why do we have to do that? Because any trend will actually going to tell you whether there is a spike or growth in it. So trend equals to growth, and seasonality means cycles, and residual means noise, basically the error term or the variations or the fluctuations that you generally have it in the understanding of it. Let us make it more clearer through our flu example. So there are flu cases. So you have the monthly flu data of the flu cases, and if you are following that data, you would try to look at the decomposed trend and seasonality, and you will make more sense about that data than anybody else. And also it can help in policy decisions, management of the disease, public health at large. There are umpteen number of applications in the healthcare. What are these applications in the healthcare? Let us look at few of them. Like, you would be able to forecast the medicine demand. For the flu cases and the COVID cases, there has been enormous pressure on the whole medical world to provide the right kind of medicines, isn't it? And that is why we are able to take care of it. Then plan and staff. The number of people who are working in the healthcare are always going to be lesser than the number of patients, and hence the paramedics, including nurses and doctors, you need to have them so that there is no pressure and there is no stress and strain on the medical infrastructure. And you would also be in a position to predict the ICU load as well. So there are few forecasting models, and a couple of them are quite interesting, and I'll just introduce you very briefly about them. The simple ones are the naive or moving average, which generally many of the hospitals usually use it. The other one is the advanced one, and the advanced one is called ARIMA. That's the acronym for Autoregressive Integrated Moving Average. Remember this word, ARIMA. And where do we use that? It is generally used to handle trends and seasonality together. There are various components to ARIMA as well. For the AR, that is autoregressive, you have the past values, and as far as I is concerned, that is for the integration, you have the differentiation, and then the last one is for MA, that is for the past error, which is basically to check the residuals or the fluctuations and the differences or variations. Take an example of the blood demand forecast. What happens in the blood demand forecast? So you can use ARIMA to predict hospital blood usage. And blood cannot be created artificially. We have to still depend on other human beings to transpose the blood from one person to the other. there is always the shortage of the blood, and hence this method, ARIMA, is going to be quite useful for understanding it. Look at from the graph, and this graph will tell you that the blood demand forecast is very clear, and there is a rise in the other period. So the actual and the predicted demand can easily be met. COVID, for example, and we have been dealing with COVID example for quite some time, and it is also quite useful to look at it, and it helps you to allocate and manage the resources. Like COVID cases, you have the spike and then downfall and so on. That is why. So what are the few limitations of the time series? Well, there are few. One is it all depends on the quality of the data. If you get some rich quality of the data, then you are in a position to predict. And if you don't, then you are restricted by it. Then there might be unexpected events that might actually put pressure on the entire system. And then you also need to update your new insights and new data, all of that. Like for the case of inventory and forecast, we generally have the pharmacy is able to predict the medicine demand. And as far as possible, we try to avoid the stock. Overstocking or understocking is a problem in that. Staffing forecast we have already dealt with. Seasonal diseases, heat stroke versus the temperature, we all know. And then we can also combine regression as well as the time series together. For example, you can predict the blood pressure with the age and time. You can in fact do that. You can also manage to do a lot of things. You can basically visualize the data through all sorts of things. There are also the outlier impact, especially one spike in the trend can also distort the data. That's why it's called the outlier. And you have to also check the anomalies and so on. Sample is going to matter a lot. Smaller the sample, unreliability. Bigger the sample, the better it is. And the doctors can take care of collecting the data and also verify and choose the appropriate methods and so on. You can even do a hands-on to look at your glucose readings and plot accordingly. So as far as time series is concerned, today we have learned about time series is nothing but data over a period of time, and it is useful for the hospital and other healthcare industry as far as the trends and forecasts are concerned. So the key takeaway from today's lecture is time series is going to give you lots of information about trend, seasonality, noise, and so on. And it depends on the forecasting model. Are you going to use the simplest one, the knife, or are you going to use the ARIMA? And there are plenty of healthcare applications. With that, we come to the end of this time series lecture. Hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to your company again with a new lesson. Until then, it's goodbye from all of us.